Good morning. Boker Tov. First of all, lords and ladies, all distinguished guests, and of course His Excellency, the Ambassador of Jordan, my friend. I arrived in London about 16 months ago, and one of my first colleagues who I met, I went to visit the Ambassador of Jordan, and I remember the warm welcome you gave me then, and it was appreciated then, and our friendship since that first meeting has been appreciated. And I think the close friendship I have with Mazen, with the Ambassador of Jordan, I think symbolizes the close and friendly relationship between the two countries. And it's been a pleasure to work beside you here in London in the time that I've been here, and we will miss you when you go and take on future and more important roles back in Jordan. Ladies and gentlemen, we should start today by, of course, welcoming the new head of the United Synagogue. Michael, it is a pleasure to be here at this first public event you're doing in this new role. And I, on behalf of the embassy, and I think everyone in this room, wish you success in leading United Synagogue over the next few years. And of course, I should say a few words to the outgoing leader, Stephen. We wish you well. We worked closely in the time that you led this organization, and I know that your period of community leadership is not over. It's a disease. Once one is infected, one cannot give it up. This year, we will mark 23 years of formal peace between Israel and Jordan. 23 years. And in the last 23 years, a lot has happened. There have been ups and downs, there have been crises, there have been conflict. But the peace between Israel and Jordan has stood the test of time. And the peace between Israel and Jordan is crucial, I believe, for regional stability. And I'll talk about this more later, and also in expanding the circle of peace. I remember when the peace treaty was signed, I was far away. I was in China, Beijing, China, serving at our embassy there. And so I remember following it very closely on the media, but I was not directly involved. But on finishing my 3 years at the Israeli embassy in China, I came back to Israel in 1996, and I volunteered to work on the Jordanian desk of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And so for 3 years, from 1996 to 1999, I was intimately involved with the growing relationship, and it was all new then, between Israel and Jordan, and it was a fascinating professional period of my life. I remember well going to Amman with the then Israeli foreign minister and having a meeting with the late King Hussein, a man who no doubt was a very, very special leader, not just for the people of Jordan, but I think anyone who met him was always impressed by King Hussein of Jordan, a remarkable leader. I remember specifically in that 3-year period that I dealt with Jordanian relations, there was a crisis. It was, I think, 97, the 13th of March. There was a terrorist incident on the border, and 7 young Israeli girls were murdered by a terrorist. And the terrorist was wearing a Jordanian army uniform. And I remember King Hussein then standing up strongly against terrorism, condemning the act, and he came personally, and some people criticized him for it, he came personally to the city of Beit Shemesh, where these girls were for, and personally visited the families of each and every one of those girls who was murdered by the terrorist, paid his respects. He did what we call in our culture a shiva visit to 7 families, one after the other. And in doing so, I think he earned a place in history in showing this is a man committed to peace, committed to reconciliation, a leader who is leading and not following. And he greatly impressed us all at the time and cemented in a very real way the peace between the two countries. After those 3 years of dealing with Israel-Jordan relations, I went off to Washington and dealt with some other issues. But upon returning, and in my previous position at the Prime Minister's office, I also had the opportunity to visit once again the palace in Amman, then already under King Abdullah II. And I remember one specific visit. There was a crisis in the peace process, and we had a trilateral meeting, King Abdullah, Prime Minister Netanyahu, and Foreign Secretary Kerry at the time, Secretary of State Kerry. And once again, the Jordanians have a unique role. They can help calm things down. They can help re-establish dialogue. Always a force of moderation, a force for good, a force to try to get the process back on track. And this is a role that Jordan's had, and I think everyone who's interested in peace in the Middle East must see the Jordanians as playing a crucial and important role. So I've now left formally dealing Jordanian affairs. I'm now in charge of relations with Britain as the ambassador here. But I'd like to tell you that there's a member of the Rega family who continues to deal with Jordanian issues, and that's my daughter. I have a 23-year-old daughter who's a captain in the Israeli military, and she is in charge of security along the Jordan River, and her job is to prevent terrorist infiltration. And you know, the Jordanian soldiers on the other side of the border have exactly the same job. Their job is also to make sure terrorists don't cross the border either way. And that is a border of peace. And if you think about it, the border between Israel and Jordan is Israel's longest land border, from the Sea of Galilee, or just north of the Sea of Galilee in the north, all the way down, straight down. You follow the Jordan River, and then you follow the Arava, all the way down to Eilat Aqaba in the south. It's our longest border, and it is a peaceful border. And the Israeli soldiers on our side of the border, the Jordanian soldiers on the side, we are working to make sure that that is a peaceful border and an example of two countries living in peace and cooperation. And that's a good thing. For Israel, and for all of us, what is the importance of our peace treaty with Jordan? One, it shows that peace is not only possible, but that peace can work. There are many people who will say to you, Arabs and Israelis are destined to be in conflict, that Jews and Muslims are preordained always to live in conflict and in hatred. No, it's not preordained, it's not destined. Peace is possible, and the Israeli-Jordanian peace treaty demonstrates clearly that peace is possible. It might not be easy sometimes, but it's possible, and it's worth making the effort. Two, from Israel's perspective, the peace treaty we have with the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan is a cornerstone of our national security. It is a crucial element in regional stability. It is something that is crucial to my country, something of preeminent importance, and it is a relationship that we cherish. And thirdly, and not less importantly, the relationship peace with Jordan is also a cornerstone, we hope, to a larger peace, to expand the circle of peace. Today we have an Israeli embassy in Amman, and there is a Jordanian embassy in Israel. We have, of course, an embassy in Cairo, in Egypt, and they have an embassy also in Israel. But we want to expand the circle of peace. We want peace with the Palestinians. We want peace with other Arab countries. And the Jordanian-Israeli peace is not only a model to be followed, but it is also a vehicle to expand the circle of peace. And we have much in common with our Arab neighbors, much in common. Because the same forces, we should all know this, the same forces that threaten Israel, extremism and radicalism, whether it's of the ISIS variety or of the Hezbollah variety. ISIS represents Sunni extremism, Hezbollah represents Shia extremism. But those same forces that threaten us threaten moderate, progressive Arab governments across the region. And I think in many ways it's anachronistic to think about the conflict in terms of Arabs against Jews. It's people standing up and fighting the forces of hatred, the forces of extremism, the forces of terror. And I hope that our peace treaty with Jordan will continue to flourish, that it will lead to an example for peace with further Arab states, and ultimately with the Palestinians as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. Before I introduce the Jordanian ambassador, if I could perhaps just remember, in fact, the further connection between the United Synagogue and the Jordanian monarchy. And the story goes back in, you will all recollect, the difficult times just after the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin. And I was a governor of King Solomon High School, which is a secondary school in Redbridge, which is a United Synagogue school. And it was opened in the early part of this century, I think, or early in the 1990s. And we had just secured the funding of the final technology block. And we were sitting in a room at the school just talking about how we would deal with the opening of that technology block. And I think the whole of the Jewish world have been completely blown away by the words of King Hussein at the funeral of Yitzhak Rabin. And a few of us just sitting around saying, there's only one person in the world who would like to open this technology block. And I wrote a letter to King Hussein, care of Amman, saying why we would like him to come and open the technology block. And in truth, forgot about the letter. Until about 10 or 12 weeks later, I got a phone call from his PA in London saying that he would be delighted to come and open the technology block. And it was a truly magnificent occasion. He flew his own helicopter, landed it in the fields of the school, and a man who I can honestly say I just exhibited just happiness in terms of being there, and a warmth towards everyone that was there, the children, the pupils at the school, and the parents and the guests, and it was a wonderful occasion. So I explained to you earlier that I've had the privilege of meeting King Abdullah in the palace, but I've also met King Hussein. And it was a truly wonderful occasion, and something that part of the United Synagogue heritage. So ladies and gentlemen, can I introduce His Excellency Mazin Hammoud, who took up his post as the ambassador in London in 2011. He was previously served as Deputy Chief of Royal Protocol under His Majesty, the late King Hussein, and a diplomat in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He was nominated in his government for his country's most prestigious King Abdullah II Award for distinction in government service and transparency in the senior executive leader category. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oops. Thank you. Can we close this slide because it's right in my eye? Is that okay? The light from this, if it's possible.
Just move that.
I'll just come in here, yeah. Good morning, everybody. First of all, I'm really delighted that today I'm together with you here and together with His Excellency the Ambassador of Israel, my friend Mark Regev, to share this morning with you. And thank you very much to the United Synagogue for making this possible, and warmest congratulations to you on your new appointment, and we wish the former executive or chairman the best in the future. I feel very comfortable when I received the invitation to come and speak at the United Synagogue. I feel very comfortable being here, and throughout my past 6 years here in London, I have made every effort, and many of those efforts were very successful, for me to re-engage or to engage the embassy with the Jewish community here in London. This effort culminated a few years ago when the leaders of the Jewish community in London set up a very nice lunch invitation for His Majesty King Abdullah, and they had a few hours to spend together talking about various issues of major concern. I always thought that this is an important part of my job, what to do here, because you cannot look at the United Kingdom without looking at the prominence and the importance of a very important cultural, religious aspect in the United Kingdom, which is the Jewish community. And of course, you know, they are historically, last night we were having a discussion talking about Semitism generally, and we were saying to ourselves, you know, how can we be anti-Semites if we are Semites ourselves? So I'm really very happy to be this morning with all of you, and just before I leave to have this opportunity. My colleague Mark took me down memory lane. Indeed, when he first came as an ambassador here, I was one of the first people that he came to stop to see, to introduce himself, because we knew both from the start that we will be working together one way or the other. There's always big cooperation, and also we are neighboring countries, and we have to have this relationship. And also I remember when I first came to this country in 2011, one of the first people I went to see was Daniel Taub, the former ambassador. I went to visit with him, and then he also returned a visit to me afterwards, and we had a wonderful working relationship. It's very important for us, for both our countries and both our embassies, to always have this relationship. But it's something for us, we talk about it because some people don't outside expect it or don't understand it, but for us it comes very naturally without even thinking or even planning ahead. Another thing that His Excellency took me down memory lane is that incident that he mentioned about, which took place in the Jordan Valley. At that time, I used to work for King Hussein, God rest his soul in peace, and I was in Washington preparing. Part of my responsibility was everything that he had to do with in America at the time. So I was in Washington preparing for a visit, and he was coming with Her Majesty Queen Noor through Spain. They were meeting the royal family there and coming from Spain to Washington when that incident happened very early in the morning. And I remember that morning I had a meeting in the Congress. So I received a call from our Jordanian ambassador there, and I said to him, what do I do? He said, you don't do anything, you just continue your work, you go do your visits, and I will be in touch with you. What happened afterwards, to continue what His Excellency was saying, that we received word that His Majesty is not coming to Washington anymore, and that he cancelled his trip, or he postponed his trip to Washington and went directly back, cut his trip to Spain, which was an official visit, went back to Amman, went straight to visit the families. That what His Excellency the Ambassador described. On my part, I continued to the Congress that morning to continue my meetings in preparation for His Majesty's visit. It was postponed, so it's going to happen, but we didn't know when. And once I entered there, I was left word by the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the Congress that he wanted to see me. And I said, you know, I wonder what's he going to say to me. The incident was the breaking news on every network you can imagine. And when he took me into his office, he said, the reason why I want you here, because I know His Majesty is on the plane, but I want you to send a message to him, okay? A message from all of us in the Congress. He had come out just from the floor of the House, a message that his speech at Madrid airport before getting on the plane, and for him cutting his trip and going back because he wants to be with Israeli families of the deceased, is something that we will never forget in the United States of America. And this is always expected from Jordan and from the Hashemite kings, and they showed great appreciation for that. It just took me down a memory lane for an incident, one of the incidents that has taken place. Another one was the visit between Rabin and His Majesty, because also at that time, it wasn't my area of influence or where I used to concentrate. It was another colleague, but I remember that many times I was involved. Their meetings were so long and so often that even the staff of that residence where they used to meet knew exactly what Rabin wanted and when they wanted. I mean, so the butler would know every 10 minutes what to take for him and what kind of food that he liked. I mean, that's how close the relationship was between both of them, but it was always discussed. But I would like to share with you about how we view this. Now, when we started this morning, Michael was mentioning about something called the QIZ, Qualified Industrial Zones. Qualified industrial zones are industrial zones that were set up between Jordan, Israel, and Palestine. But probably the most two countries that have benefited from this is Jordan and Israel because of the space. So we cooperate, the three countries, the three areas, we cooperate on production. And so let's say if an item is being manufactured, a certain percentage from Jordan, a certain percentage from Israel, and a certain percentage from Palestine, it could be sold in the American market, enter the American market with no taxes, no tariffs, nothing. And this is why, within a very short period of time, our countries managed to attract the biggest garment manufacturers in Asia. This is just an example, a small example of what a peace treaty means in the region. Because you have factories, people work, people thrive, people have incomes, and it integrates societies together. In my opinion, economic prosperity for all the peoples in the region is something that is an extremely important aspect. People have to feel the results of, I want to just say a peace treaty, but good relations between countries have to always culminate and has to translate for the benefit of the people. The qualified industrial zones and the cooperation that has taken place between Jordan and Israel in this particular field and in many other economic fields is something that is notable and is extremely important to protect, which takes me into my next subject, which is spreading this important relationship so that we can have peace treaties and we can have a normal life in the region. Indeed, the Jordan-Israeli peace treaty is a model. And this is why, throughout the years, as the ambassador said, there's been ups and there's been downs, but everybody on both sides, during the down periods, did everything they possibly can to protect the peace treaty so that it can remain a model. Because one day it could be a model, and the other day it could not be a model. It's a model in many people's eyes, but it's also not a model in many other people's eyes. Why is it not a model in some other people's eyes? Even though this peace treaty between our two countries allows people like yourselves and others to come and visit Jordan, get in a car, travel to Israel. One of our colleagues, ambassadors, the other day from Guatemala, he celebrated his 70th birthday in Israel and in Jordan. Him and his family flew in from all parts of the world, and they went to Israel, drove all Israel, crossed Jordan, drove all Jordan, and that's how they celebrated the 70th birthday. I said, who was your guide? Who drove you? He said, nobody. Our son drove. I said, who guided you? He said, we just bought a map. I said, simple. He said, simple. Okay. I said, how did you cross the border? He said, it took us 15 minutes. They even gave us tea at the border. I said, amazing, amazing. Well, we know that. I never knew it was so simple, okay? I never knew it was so simple. My brother from Boston, just this week at a medical conference, they're doing it in Jordan, he sent pictures from Jerusalem. I said, how was that experience? He said, it was an excellent experience. So the benefits of a peace treaty between the two countries is amazing. And it is a model, as I said, in many people's eyes. Why is it not a model in other people's eyes? The peace treaty from the beginning, it is between Jordan, Israel, Egypt and Israel, Palestine and Israel, but everybody's waiting. What was promised from the beginning, that this is going to reach, in the end, culminate to a two-state solution. Basically, an independent state for the Palestinian people. After 23 years with the Jordan peace agreement, and after much more than that with the Egyptians, there are a lot of people who are just sitting there and watching and say, you didn't listen to us. It's never going to happen. You're going about it the wrong way. Okay? Some people say this verbally in meetings like this, breakfast meetings, lunch meetings, writers writing in the paper. Some people take it to the more extreme, and more extreme, and even more extreme, because the value chain is different. They're always sitting there watching. We have seen what has happened as an example, an unfortunate example, is what happened to one of the Egyptian presidents. Egypt, it costed Egypt a life of a president, as it did Israel. As it did Israel. This is something that's difficult for everyone. It comes at a very high cost. But it just shows you the resistance there are. It's a very few, or very many, who resist this kind of approach because they don't see a light at the end of the tunnel, and they believe that the peacemakers are giving up too much. I would just mention here, because always remember, when I speak as a Jordanian, when Mark speaks as an Israeli, we only speak in the most positive sense. We are agents for peace. We are agents that we want peace, we want security, we want stability, we want to get on with our lives. But the ambassador said something very important, is that we want to do this as a model and to replicate. Based on this, as an example, this happens every year, but in the recent Arab League conference, the League of Arab States conference that took place in Jordan at the end of March, the communique that came out, the first part of that communique, which is basically the description of all the heads of states of the Arab countries, sent out another message of peace to Israel. We all want peace with you. All 22 countries. We want to have a normal relationship with Israel. We need this relationship. We need to get on with our lives. You have to understand something. There's no issue at all between Islam and Jewishness. There's no problem there. Okay? We feel very comfortable historically with Jews in our communities. That's why they thrived. I never knew. I saw a documentary film recently about the life of Gertrude Bell. I didn't know that Baghdad, at the turn of the century, the turn of the 20th century, the population was 200,000 people, 80,000 Jews. I never knew that. I never knew that the percentage was so high. But they didn't live there just for 2 years. They lived there throughout history. And they had an important life role to play in the life of an Islamic country. Nobody thought that this is a Jew or this is a Muslim or this is a Christian, because also Iraq has a huge Christian community. The message coming out from the Arab world is a message of peace, that we need to integrate. We have common things, not only the economy. We have in common the threat from the region, threat from outside. And Israel, with its economic and distinguished technology, is an important part, to be part of the Arab world, to be part of the Arabian Peninsula, to be integrated in our world, to have a normal relationship for us to be able to face their challenges and to be able to allow our people to live in peace and happiness on both sides. And this, of course, is a description of the Arab Peace Initiative that was issued in the year 2002, that was endorsed by of course, the Arab League, and endorsed by the Organization of Islamic Conference, which has all the Islamic states in it, even though many were saying, we agree, but it's never going to happen. So after saying that, my last words is, and my last thoughts is that with this wonderful relationship that we enjoy economically, in terms of the social structure, in terms of people visiting both countries, there are certain parts of that relationship that we feel responsible, because we are under pressure, that we want to see a light at the end of the tunnel. Another example is Jerusalem. And I'm sure that some of you will ask questions about Jerusalem, but we're talking about the Haram al-Sharif, the Aqsa Mosque there, the intrusion by people who, we have extremists on both sides, and they put pressure, ours put pressure on our government, and there are others on Israel who put pressure on their government, which strains sometimes the relationship between everyone and makes it more complicated. But all of us are trying very hard to overcome this, and the message coming out from the Arab world is a very strong message of peace with Israel, not because we say it for peace, because we need it and our people need it. I think I will end my conversation at this, and thank you very much.